everyone, this is Brianna, Keilar. What unfolded in the last 24 hours has rewritten the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere. A foreign government collapsed, an arrest was executed under extraordinary circumstances, and a sequence of events long hidden from public view has now come into focus. This was not spontaneous, it was not chaotic, and according to internal records and testimony given under oath, it was planned with precision. What you're about to hear explains why celebrations erupted instead of panic, and why global markets are bracing for a shift that few saw coming. Before we go further, subscribe right now, because what you're about to hear is not being explained clearly anywhere else. And once you understand it, you'll see why so many details were deliberately buried. Let me start with the moment everything changed. At 4:18 a.m. local time, airspace over northern Venezuela was restricted without public notice. Flight logs from 3 regional airports show immediate grounding orders. No explanation, no announcement, just coded instructions transmitted to tower supervisors. Those logs were later released as evidence in a sealed filing connected to a federal investigation in New York. The timestamps matter, because just 4 hours earlier, according to internal diplomatic cables, senior Chinese officials were inside the presidential palace in Caracas. I'm going to read directly from one of those cables. Meeting concluded at 0011. Discussion focused on continuity assurances and asset exposure. Read that again. Continuity assurances, asset exposure. Those words appear repeatedly across multiple documents. By sunrise, the streets of Caracas told a different story. Videos archived by international monitoring groups show crowds gathering not in fear, but in celebration. People waving flags, singing, crying. Think about that. A government falls, and the response is relief. Now here's where the paper trail becomes impossible to ignore. A 96-page internal briefing prepared weeks earlier outlines 3 scenarios. The third scenario is labeled simply removal. Under it, a paragraph reads, subject to rapid transfer and immediate jurisdictional control. That paragraph is highlighted. The date on the document is February 27th. On March 3rd, a DOJ coordination memo references pending custody logistics. Names are redacted, locations are not. One line states, transfer destination, SDNY, Southern District of New York. President Nicolas Maduro was arrested and transferred to New York on charges of money laundering. That fact alone would be historic, but the surrounding context makes it seismic. Venezuela possesses the world's largest proven oil reserves, approximately 330 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Iran. That number appears again and again in internal energy assessments attached to this file. One assessment includes a chart projecting global oil prices under different leadership outcomes. In the post-removal column, prices declined sharply within 60 days. Now, let me be clear, I'm not making accusations. I'm reading what's in the file. Another document, this one labeled Prosecutor Memo Draft, references Venezuela's role as a major transit route for cocaine originating in Colombia. Specific routes are named, specific ports are listed, and next to each, there's a notation, revenue stream. According to sworn testimony from a former intelligence analyst, those streams were central to the case built against the Maduro government. But it doesn't stop there. An email chain dated the night before the operation shows urgency. One sender writes, if Beijing thinks this is about oil alone, they're missing the exposure. Another responds, they're not missing it. That's why they're here. Here's the part no one expected. Attached to that email is a photograph of a conference room table. On it, briefing folders in 3 languages, Spanish, English, Mandarin. The photo metadata places it inside the Miraflores Palace. Timestamp, 4 hours before the strike. Usually when a country is attacked, the public reacts with anger and fear. This time, the situation inside Venezuela was completely different. Millions of citizens poured into the streets celebrating. After decades of socialism, extreme inflation, hunger, and oppression, many people called it the end of a historic era. Internal social media analysis conducted by an international NGO counted over 12 million celebratory posts within the first 24 hours. Think about that, 12 million. Now let's talk about China, because buried deep in the evidence is a financial exposure report. It states that China had been purchasing Venezuelan oil at discounted prices for years. In exchange, billions of dollars in infrastructure loans, ports, rail, power stations. According to the report, outstanding investment at risk exceeds $19.4 billion. That number is circled in red. One witness testifying under oath described a tense exchange during the palace meeting. Quote, "They wanted guarantees we couldn't give them." When asked who they were, the answer was simple: the Chinese delegation. 4 hours later, the operation began. Flight manifests show a single aircraft departing from a restricted runway under military escort. No passenger list publicly released. But a later court filing confirms the individual on board, President Nicolas Maduro. Now we move into the courtroom phase, because within hours of arrival in New York, sealed indictments were unsealed. Charges of money laundering, conspiracy, narcotics facilitation. The indictment references bank transfers totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Specific account numbers are partially redacted. But the pattern is clear. Money moved through shell companies, through intermediaries, through jurisdictions chosen for opacity. Let me read this line. Defendant knowingly used sovereign authority to conceal proceeds. Knowingly, that word matters. Meanwhile, back in Venezuela, interim authorities released a statement promising open elections and economic reform. Oil workers returned to facilities, export terminals reopened, internal market forecasts predicted increased output within 90 days. Monday will be extremely important in terms of global markets' reaction. One thing is clear: oil prices may decline, and the United States may rely less on Middle Eastern oil. Now pause. Because this isn't just about Venezuela. It's about precedent. It's about what happens when geopolitical strategy, energy security, and criminal prosecution converge. Short sentences matter here because the implications are massive. If this were anyone else, if this were a smaller reserve base, the response might have been muted. But this was the largest proven oil reserve on Earth, and control over it just shifted. Internal correspondence between energy analysts describes this as a realignment moment. Another memo calls it the quiet end of a long stalemate. Quiet, except for the celebrations. You have to ask why now? Why this moment? One internal timeline provides a clue. It lists election cycles, commodity pressures, currency stress, all converging in the same quarter. This wasn't rushed, it was timed. Legal stakes are enormous, political stakes even more so. Because once a sitting head of state is removed and prosecuted in this way, the message is unmistakable. And moral stakes? They're visible in the streets of Caracas, in the faces of people who felt trapped for decades. We're nearing the end, and I want to be calm about this because panic helps no one, but awareness matters. What we've seen are official records, prosecutor memos, diplomatic cables, flight logs, testimony under oath, all pointing in the same direction. A government fell, not by accident, but by design. Long term, this raises serious questions about sovereignty, about intervention, about who decides when a regime's time is up. Think about that. Thanks for watching, subscribe, share this, and stay alert. Don't let anyone tell you this doesn't matter, because it does.